There is a moment in every human life when the ground beneath their feet disappears. Not literally, of course. The floor remains solid, the walls stay upright, the world continues its indifferent rotation. But something inside collapses. Something that held everything together suddenly gives way, and in that instant, a person discovers a truth they had spent their entire existence avoiding. The pain you feel is not what you think it is. It is not the consequence of what happened to you. It is the echo of what you can no longer control. This is not a comfortable revelation. It is not the kind of insight that brings peace or closure. It is the kind of knowledge that changes the architecture of your mind, that rewrites the story you have been telling yourself about who you are and why you suffer. And once you see it, once you truly understand it, there is no going back to the innocence of not knowing. Before we continue, a warning. The knowledge that is about to be shared cannot be unlearned. It will permanently change the way you see human relationships. If you are ready to abandon comfortable illusions and see what is behind the stage, subscribe now. Because this is not just a video. It is the beginning of your journey under the mask. Now let us begin. Imagine a woman sitting alone in her apartment on a Thursday evening. The light from the window is fading, casting long shadows across the furniture. She is holding her phone, staring at a message that arrived 3 hours ago. The message itself is unremarkable. A simple text from someone she thought she knew, someone she believed cared about her. But the words on the screen have triggered something deep inside her chest, a sensation that feels like drowning in air. Her hands are trembling slightly. Her breathing has become shallow. And if you asked her to explain what she is feeling, she would probably say she is hurt. She would say she is disappointed. She would say that this person has let her down. But that would not be the truth. Not the whole truth, anyway. Because what she is actually experiencing in this moment is not the pain of betrayal or abandonment. What she is experiencing is the sudden, terrifying realization that she cannot make this person behave the way she needs them to behave. She cannot control their choices. She cannot force them to see her value. She cannot manipulate the outcome of this relationship to match the script she had written in her mind. And that loss of control, that confrontation with her own powerlessness, is what creates the sensation she calls pain. This is the secret that most people spend their entire lives running from. We do not suffer because bad things happen to us. We suffer because we discover, again and again, that we cannot prevent bad things from happening. We suffer because reality refuses to obey our will. We suffer because other people insist on being themselves instead of the characters we need them to be in our personal drama. Think about the last time you felt genuine emotional pain. Not physical discomfort, but that deep ache that seems to originate from somewhere behind your ribs, that heaviness that makes it difficult to breathe properly. Now ask yourself this question, and answer it honestly. What were you trying to control when that pain arrived? What outcome were you attempting to force into existence? What person were you trying to change? What situation were you trying to manipulate into a shape that felt safe? The answer to that question is always there, hiding beneath the surface narrative. A man feels devastated when his business partner betrays him, but the real wound is not the betrayal itself. The real wound is the discovery that he could not control his partner's loyalty, that all his careful planning and strategic thinking could not prevent this outcome. A mother feels heartbroken when her adult child chooses a path she disapproves of, but the real source of her suffering is not concern for her child's well-being. The real source is the realization that she no longer has the power to direct her child's life, that her influence has limits, that her child exists as a separate being with autonomous will. This is why grief feels the way it does. When someone we love dies, we are not merely sad about their absence. We are confronted with the ultimate loss of control. We cannot bring them back. We cannot negotiate with death. We cannot manipulate reality into giving us more time. The finality of it, the absolute impossibility of changing what has happened, creates a pain so profound that it can feel like our own death. Because in a sense, it is. It is the death of our illusion that we have any real power over the fundamental conditions of existence. Human beings are control addicts. We are born into a world that is chaotic, unpredictable, and fundamentally indifferent to our desires. And from the moment we gain consciousness, we begin constructing elaborate systems to create the illusion of control. We develop routines and rituals. We build relationships based on unspoken contracts. We create moral frameworks that promise predictable outcomes. We tell ourselves stories about how the world works, stories that always place us at the center, stories that suggest our actions have clear and proportional consequences. But these are all lies we tell ourselves to manage our terror. The truth is that we control almost nothing. We do not control other people's thoughts or feelings. We do not control the economy, or the weather, or the trajectory of history. We do not even fully control our own minds, our own emotions, our own bodies. We are, each of us, a tiny island of limited agency floating in an ocean of forces we can neither predict nor influence. And yet we cannot accept this. We cannot live with the raw truth of our powerlessness. So we do what humans have always done. We create masks. We construct elaborate performances designed to give us the feeling of control, even when that control is purely imaginary. Consider the mask of the caretaker. This is one of the most common and most insidious masks in human society. The caretaker presents themselves as selfless, as devoted to the well-being of others, as someone who finds fulfillment in service and sacrifice. They are always available, always helpful, always putting other people's needs before their own. And on the surface, this appears to be noble. It appears to be the opposite of manipulation. It appears to be love. But look closer. Watch what happens when the person they are caring for does not respond with appropriate gratitude. Watch what happens when their help is rejected or their advice is ignored. Watch what happens when the object of their care makes choices that contradict the caretaker's vision of what is best. Suddenly, the mask slips. Suddenly, there is anger, resentment, a sense of betrayal. The caretaker feels hurt, feels unappreciated, feels used. And they will tell you that their pain comes from being taken for granted, from giving so much and receiving so little in return. But that is not what is actually happening. What is actually happening is that the caretaker has been using their helpfulness as a tool of control. Every act of service was an investment, a down payment on future compliance. Every sacrifice was a chain, carefully forged and lovingly placed around the neck of the person being helped. The caretaker was not giving freely. They were purchasing influence. They were building a debt that they expected to be repaid in obedience, in gratitude, in the surrender of autonomy. And when that debt is not honored, when the person they have been caring for insists on making their own choices anyway, the caretaker experiences the pain of lost control. They realize that all their effort, all their sacrifice, all their careful cultivation of dependency has failed to give them the power they were seeking. The person they tried to control through kindness has remained free. And that freedom, that autonomy, that refusal to be owned, creates a wound that the caretaker experiences as profound injustice. This is the dark secret of many relationships that appear loving on the surface. The parent who sacrifices everything for their children is often not motivated by pure love, but by the desire to create an unpayable debt, to ensure that their children will never be able to leave them emotionally. The friend who is always there in times of crisis is often not motivated by genuine compassion, but by the need to be needed, to create a dynamic where they are indispensable, where their absence would cause collapse. The partner who constantly gives and gives and gives is often not motivated by generosity, but by the hope that their giving will eventually obligate the other person to stay, to change, to become the person they need them to be. And when this strategy fails, when the giving does not produce the desired control, the pain that emerges is not the pain of unrequited love. It is the pain of a failed manipulation. It is the rage of a puppeteer who discovers that the strings they thought they were pulling were never actually attached to anything. There is a man who works in a corporate office in a city that could be anywhere. He is in his late 30s, successful by conventional measures, respected by his colleagues. He has spent the last decade carefully building his career, making strategic alliances, positioning himself for advancement. He is good at reading people, good at knowing what to say and when to say it, good at presenting himself as competent and reliable and trustworthy. But there is something eating at him, something that keeps him awake at night, something that creates a constant low-level anxiety that he cannot quite name. He tells himself it is stress. He tells himself it is the pressure of responsibility. He tells himself it is the natural consequence of ambition. But none of these explanations quite fit. The feeling is more specific than general stress. It is more personal than professional pressure. What he is actually experiencing, though he would never admit this even to himself, is the exhausting burden of maintaining control over how other people perceive him. Every interaction is a performance. Every conversation is a calculation. He is constantly monitoring his own behavior, adjusting his tone, his posture, his facial expressions to create the impression he needs to create. He is managing his image the way a politician manages a campaign, always aware of how he is being seen, always concerned with the narrative that is forming in other people's minds. And this is exhausting. Not just tiring, but existentially draining. Because he can never relax. He can never simply be himself, whatever that might mean. He has to be the version of himself that serves his goals, that maintains his position, that protects his carefully constructed reputation. And the worst part is that he knows, on some level, that this control is fragile. He knows that one mistake, one moment of authenticity, one slip of the mask could undo years of careful work. So he lives in a state of constant vigilance, constantly scanning for threats to his image, constantly preparing responses to potential challenges, constantly reinforcing the walls of his persona. And he calls this professionalism. He calls it maturity. He calls it being responsible. But what it actually is a prison. A prison he has built for himself, cell by cell, lie by lie, performance by performance. And when something happens that threatens his control over his image, when someone sees through his performance or challenges his narrative or refuses to accept the version of himself he is presenting, he experiences pain. Not the pain of being misunderstood, but the pain of losing control over the story. The pain of realizing that other people have their own perceptions, their own interpretations, their own narratives, and he cannot force them to see him the way he needs to be seen. This is the fundamental paradox of the human condition. We desperately need other people. We are social creatures, wired for connection, unable to survive or thrive in isolation. But other people are also the greatest threat to our sense of control. Because other people have their own minds, their own wills, their own agendas. They cannot be fully known or predicted or managed. They are, each of them, a source of chaos in our carefully ordered world. So we develop strategies. We learn from a very young age how to influence other people's behavior. We learn what makes them smile, what makes them angry, what makes them give us what we want. We learn to read facial expressions and tone of voice. We learn to adjust our own behavior to produce desired responses. We become, in essence, amateur psychologists, constantly running experiments in human manipulation. And most of the time, we do not even recognize this as manipulation. We think of it as social skills. We think of it as emotional intelligence. We think of it as being a good person who knows how to get along with others. But underneath all these pleasant labels is the same basic drive. The drive to control. The drive to make other people behave in ways that serve our needs, our comfort, our vision of how things should be. Children are perhaps the most honest about this. A child who wants a toy will try every strategy in their limited repertoire. They will ask nicely. They will beg. They will cry. They will throw a tantrum. They will promise to be good. They will threaten to hold their breath. Each of these is an attempt to control the adult's behavior, to force compliance through emotional manipulation. And when none of these strategies work, when the adult remains firm in their refusal, the child experiences genuine anguish. Not because they are spoiled or entitled, but because they are confronting the limits of their power. They are discovering that they cannot control the world, and that discovery is terrifying. Adults are no different. We have simply learned more sophisticated strategies. We have learned to disguise our attempts at control behind socially acceptable masks. We have learned to make our manipulations look like love, like concern, like helpfulness, like reason. But the underlying mechanism is the same. We're trying to make other people do what we want them to do. And when they refuse, when they insist on their own autonomy, we experience pain. Consider the phenomenon of jealousy. We are told that jealousy is about love, about fear of loss, about insecurity. And there is some truth to these explanations. But they miss the deeper mechanism. Jealousy is fundamentally about control. It emerges when we realize that we cannot control another person's attention, their desire, their choices. It is the pain of recognizing that the person we want to possess is not actually possessible, that they have their own inner life, their own attractions, their own freedom. A jealous person will often describe their feelings as fear. They will say they are afraid of being abandoned, afraid of being replaced, afraid of being alone. But watch what they actually do with their jealousy. They do not simply sit with their fear. They act. They monitor. They question. They demand reassurance. They create rules and boundaries. They try to limit their partner's interactions with potential rivals. They are, in every action, attempting to establish control. They are trying to make their partner's behavior predictable, containable, safe. And when their partner resists this control, when they insist on their right to have friends, to go places alone, to maintain some privacy, the jealous person experiences this resistance as a form of cruelty. They feel hurt. They feel disrespected. They feel unloved. But what they are actually feeling is the pain of failed control. They are experiencing the anguish of realizing that another human being will not surrender their autonomy, even for love. This is why jealousy is so often accompanied by anger, because anger is the emotion of thwarted will. It is what we feel when the world refuses to bend to our desires. A jealous person is angry not because they are being mistreated, but because they are being denied the control they believe they deserve. They are angry because their partner insists on being a separate person, rather than an extension of their own ego. And here is where it becomes truly dark. Because once you understand that pain is the experience of lost control, you begin to see how people use their own pain as a weapon. They learn that expressing suffering can be a powerful tool of manipulation. They learn that if they display enough hurt, enough anguish, enough vulnerability, other people will often change their behavior to make the pain stop. This is not always conscious. Most people who do this are not sitting in a room plotting how to weaponize their emotions. They genuinely feel the pain they are expressing. But they have also learned, through years of social conditioning, that pain has power, that suffering creates obligation, that if you can make someone feel responsible for your emotional state, you can control their behavior. Think about the person who responds to any boundary with tears. The person who, when told no, immediately crumbles into visible distress. The person who makes their pain so present, so undeniable, that the other person feels compelled to take back the boundary, to say yes after all, to prioritize the emotional comfort of the person in pain over their own needs or limits. This is manipulation through suffering, and it is incredibly effective because it disguises itself as vulnerability. The person doing it can maintain their self-image as a victim, as someone who is simply too sensitive, too emotional, too hurt by the cruelty of others. They do not have to acknowledge that they are engaging in a power play. They do not have to admit that their tears are a strategy, that their pain is a tool, that their vulnerability is a mask worn to conceal the iron wool underneath. And the person on the receiving end of this manipulation often cannot name what is happening to them. They just know that every time they try to assert a boundary, every time they try to say no, every time they try to prioritize their own needs, they are met with such a display of suffering that they feel like a monster. They feel cruel. They feel responsible. And so they back down. They surrender. They give the other person what they want, not out of love or generosity, but out of the desperate need to make the pain stop. This dynamic can persist for years, even decades. The manipulator never has to acknowledge what they are doing because they genuinely believe their own narrative. They believe they are the victim. They believe their pain is caused by the other person's selfishness or insensitivity or lack of love. They do not see that they are using their suffering as a chain, that every tear is a link, that every expression of hurt is a tightening of the grip. And the person being manipulated often cannot leave because they have been trained to believe that they are responsible for the other person's emotional state. They have internalized the idea that love means never causing pain, that caring means always prioritizing the other person's comfort, that being a good person means surrendering their own boundaries to prevent someone else's suffering. But this is not love. This is hostage-taking. This is emotional terrorism. This is the use of pain as a weapon to maintain control. There is a woman who has been married for 15 years. From the outside, her marriage looks stable, even happy. She and her husband have built a life together, raised children together, created a home that appears warm and functional. But inside that home, inside that relationship, there is a dynamic that she cannot quite name, a pattern that leaves her feeling constantly off balance, constantly anxious, constantly walking on eggshells. Her husband is not violent. He does not yell or threaten or physically intimidate. In fact, he is often described by others as gentle, as thoughtful, as a good man. But there is something in the way he responds to conflict, something in the way he handles disagreement, that makes it almost impossible for her to express her own needs or desires. Whenever she tries to bring up something that bothers her, whenever she attempts to have a difficult conversation, he becomes quiet. Not angry quiet, but hurt quiet, wounded quiet. He withdraws into himself, his face taking on an expression of such profound sadness that she immediately feels like she has done something terrible. He does not argue with her. He does not defend himself. He simply absorbs her words like blows, flinching slightly, his eyes taking on a distant quality, as if he is retreating to some inner place where he can protect himself from her cruelty. And she finds herself, every single time, abandoning whatever point she was trying to make. She finds herself comforting him, reassuring him, apologizing for hurting him. The conversation that was supposed to be about her needs becomes about his pain. The issue she wanted to address disappears beneath the weight of his suffering. And she is left feeling guilty, feeling like she is the problem, feeling like her desire to be heard is somehow an act of violence against this gentle, sensitive man who loves her. This has been happening for so long that she has almost stopped trying to have difficult conversations. She has learned to swallow her frustrations, to minimize her own needs, to tell herself that her concerns are not important enough to justify causing him pain. She has become smaller and smaller in the relationship, her voice growing quieter, her presence becoming more tentative, until she sometimes feels like a ghost in her own life. But she does not recognize this as abuse. How could she? He has never raised his hand to her. He has never called her names. He has never done any of the things that she associates with mistreatment. He is just sensitive. He is just easily hurt. He is just someone who needs to be handled carefully, protected from harsh truths, shielded from conflict. What she does not see, what she cannot see because she has been trained not to see it, is that his sensitivity is a weapon. His pain is a strategy. His withdrawal is a form of punishment designed to teach her not to challenge him, not to make demands, not to assert her own needs. He has found a way to control her that is far more effective than anger or intimidation could ever be. He has made her responsible for his emotional state, and in doing so, he has made it impossible for her to prioritize her own. And he, for his part, probably does not even recognize what he is doing. He genuinely feels hurt when she criticizes him. He genuinely experiences her attempts at honest communication as attacks. He has constructed a reality in which he is the victim and she is the aggressor, and this reality feels completely true to him. He does not see himself as manipulative. He sees himself as wounded, as someone who has been forced to protect himself from a partner who does not understand how deeply her words affect him. This is the insidious nature of emotional manipulation. It does not require conscious intent. It does not require malice. It simply requires a person who has learned that displaying pain is an effective way to control other people's behavior, combined with a person who has learned that they are responsible for managing other people's emotions. Put these two people together, and you create a dynamic that can persist indefinitely, with both parties convinced that they are acting out of love. But it is not love. Love does not require one person to disappear, so the other can remain comfortable. Love does not demand that one person sacrifice their voice to protect the other from the discomfort of honest communication. Love does not use pain as a tool to prevent growth, change, or authentic connection. What this is control. Control disguised as sensitivity. Control hidden behind the mask of vulnerability. Control that operates through the manipulation of guilt and responsibility. And the pain that both people feel in this dynamic, the suffering that seems so real and so justified, is ultimately the pain of a system built on the denial of autonomy. He is in pain because he cannot control her perceptions of him. She is in pain because she cannot express herself without triggering his suffering. Both are trapped in a dance of mutual control, each trying to manage the other's behavior, neither willing to accept the fundamental truth that other people cannot be controlled without destroying the possibility of genuine relationship. This pattern exists everywhere in human society. It exists in families, where parents use their disappointment as a weapon to control adult children's choices. It exists in friendships, where one person's constant crises create an obligation that prevents the other from ever prioritizing their own life. It exists in workplaces, where managers use their stress and overwhelm to guilt employees into working beyond reasonable limits. It exists in romantic relationships, where one person's jealousy or insecurity becomes the organizing principle around which all decisions must be made. And in every case, the mechanism is the same. Someone's pain becomes another person's responsibility. Someone's suffering becomes another person's problem to solve. And the solution always involves the second person surrendering some aspect of their autonomy, some piece of their freedom, some part of their authentic self. The question that arises then is this: if pain is the experience of lost control, and if we are constantly trying to control things we cannot actually control, is all pain therefore pointless? Is suffering simply the result of our own delusion, our own refusal to accept reality as it is? This is where the analysis becomes more nuanced. Because while it is true that much of human suffering is self-created, the result of our desperate attempts to control the uncontrollable, it is also true that the desire for control is not arbitrary. It is not a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It is a survival mechanism, deeply embedded in our evolutionary history. Human beings are vulnerable creatures. We are born helpless, dependent on others for years before we can survive on our own. We live in bodies that can be injured, that can become sick, that will inevitably decay and die. We exist in a world full of threats, both physical and social. And throughout most of human history, the ability to exert control over one's environment, to influence other people's behavior, to predict and manage threats, was literally the difference between life and death. So we evolved to be control-seeking creatures. We evolved to feel anxiety when we cannot predict what will happen next. We evolved to feel pain when we lose our ability to influence important outcomes. These feelings are not mistakes. They are features designed by natural selection to keep us alive in a dangerous world. The problem is that the world we live in now is radically different from the world we evolved to navigate. We no longer live in small tribes where our survival depends on our ability to maintain our position in a stable social hierarchy. We no longer face primarily physical threats that can be managed through careful planning and strategic action. We live in a complex, globalized, rapidly changing world where most of the forces that shape our lives are completely beyond our individual control. But our brains have not caught up to this new reality. We still have the same nervous system, the same emotional responses, the same deep drive to control our environment that served our ancestors so well. And so we apply these ancient mechanisms to modern problems, trying to control things that cannot be controlled, feeling pain when we fail, never quite understanding why our strategies do not work. This is the tragedy of the human condition. We are creatures designed for a world that no longer exists, trying to use tools that are no longer appropriate, suffering from the mismatch between our evolutionary programming and our actual circumstances. But understanding this does not make the pain go away. Knowing that your suffering is the result of trying to control the uncontrollable does not automatically give you the ability to stop trying. Because the drive to control is not rational. It is not something you can simply think your way out of. It is wired into the deepest parts of your brain, operating below the level of conscious thought. This is why self-help advice so often fails. People are told to let go, to accept what they cannot change, to focus on what is within their control. And these are not bad ideas. They are, in fact, quite wise. But they are also almost impossible to implement, because they require you to override millions of years of evolutionary programming with nothing but conscious intention. It is like telling someone who is drowning to just relax and float. Technically, this is correct advice. Relaxing and floating is indeed the best way to survive in water. But when you are actually drowning, when your lungs are burning and your body is screaming for air, and every instinct is telling you to thrash and fight and grab onto anything you can reach, the instruction to relax feels like a cruel joke. You cannot simply decide to override your panic. You cannot think your way into calmness while your nervous system is in full survival mode. The same is true for the pain of lost control. You cannot simply decide to stop caring about things you cannot control. You cannot think your way into acceptance while your entire being is screaming that you need to do something, fix something, change something, make the situation safe. So what is the answer? If we cannot control the things that cause us pain, and we cannot stop ourselves from trying to control them, are we simply doomed to suffer? Perhaps. Perhaps suffering is simply the price of consciousness, the inevitable consequence of being a creature that can imagine how things should be while living in a world that refuses to cooperate with those imaginings. Perhaps the best we can do is learn to suffer more gracefully, to recognize our pain for what it is, to stop adding layers of story and meaning and blame on top of the raw experience of loss. Because here is what makes suffering worse. It is not the pain itself, but our relationship to the pain. It is not the loss of control, but our belief that we should have had control in the first place. It is not the failure of our manipulation, but our conviction that we were entitled to succeed. When we believe that we deserve to control other people, that we have a right to determine outcomes, that the world owes us predictability and safety and fairness, then every instance of lost control becomes not just painful but unjust. It becomes a violation, a betrayal, an outrage. And we add anger and resentment and self-pity to the simple pain of loss, creating a compound suffering that is far worse than the original experience. But if we can recognize that control was always an illusion, that we never actually had the power we thought we had, that other people were always autonomous beings beyond our ability to fully manage, then the loss becomes less personal. It becomes simply a fact of existence rather than a cosmic injustice. And facts, while they may be unpleasant, do not generate the same kind of suffering as perceived injustices. This is not the same as acceptance. Acceptance implies a kind of peaceful surrender, a spiritual transcendence of desire. And that may be possible for some people, for those who have done deep psychological work or achieved some kind of enlightenment. But for most of us, that level of acceptance is not realistic. We will continue to want things. We will continue to try to influence outcomes. We will continue to feel pain when we fail. But we can perhaps develop a different relationship to that pain. We can learn to recognize it as information rather than as evidence of wrongdoing. We can see it as a signal that we have encountered the limits of our power rather than as proof that someone has failed us or that we have failed ourselves. We can experience the pain without adding the story, without creating elaborate narratives about what the pain means, without using it as ammunition in our ongoing war against reality. This is harder than it sounds, because humans are storytelling creatures. We cannot help but create narratives to explain our experiences. And the narratives we create about pain are almost always narratives of blame. Someone must be responsible. Someone must be at fault. Either we failed, or someone else failed, or the universe itself is cruel and unjust. We cannot simply let pain be pain. We have to make it mean something. But what if it does not mean anything? What if pain is just the sensation that arises when a control-seeking creature encounters the limits of its power? What if there is no deeper significance, no moral lesson, no cosmic purpose? What if it is simply a fact of existence, as neutral as gravity or entropy? This is a difficult idea to accept because it strips pain of its dramatic weight. We want our suffering to matter. We want it to be important, to be meaningful, to be worthy of attention and sympathy and compensation. We want to believe that if we are in pain, someone should do something about it. Someone should fix it, or at least acknowledge it, or at the very least feel guilty about causing it. But if pain is just the experience of lost control, and if control was always an illusion, then our suffering has no inherent claim on anyone else's behavior. It does not obligate others to change. It does not prove that we have been wronged. It does not entitle us to compensation or revenge or even understanding. It is simply our own private experience, our own internal response to the gap between what we wanted and what actually happened. And this realization, while it may seem cold or harsh, is actually liberating. Because if your pain does not obligate others to change their behavior, then their pain does not obligate you to change yours. If suffering is not a form of currency that can be exchanged for control, then you are free to stop using your own pain as a weapon and to stop allowing others to use their pain to manipulate you. You can acknowledge that someone is hurting without accepting responsibility for their hurt. You can feel compassion for their suffering without surrendering your boundaries to alleviate it. You can recognize that their pain is real and valid and significant to them, while also recognizing that it does not give them the right to control your choices. This is the key to breaking free from the cycles of manipulation that dominate so many human relationships. Not by becoming cold or uncaring, but by understanding that love and control are fundamentally incompatible. You cannot truly love someone while trying to control them. And you cannot be truly loved by someone who sees you as an object to be managed rather than as an autonomous being to be encountered. Real love, if such a thing exists, requires the acceptance of the other person's fundamental freedom. It requires the willingness to be in relationship with someone who might choose to leave, who might change in ways you do not like, who might prioritize their own needs over your comfort. It requires the courage to remain connected to someone without trying to possess them, to care about someone without trying to control them, to be vulnerable to someone without trying to obligate them. And this kind of love is rare, because it is terrifying. It offers no guarantees, no security, no protection against loss. It requires you to give up the illusion of control and to accept that the person you love is a mystery, an autonomous agent whose choices you can influence but never determine. Most people cannot tolerate this level of uncertainty, so they settle for something that looks like love, but is actually a complex system of mutual control. They create relationships based on unspoken contracts, on carefully negotiated exchanges of behavior, on the implicit understanding that if I do this for you, you will do that for me. And they call this love. They call it commitment. They call it partnership. But it is not love. It is a business arrangement. It is a treaty between two parties who have agreed to limit each other's freedom in exchange for the illusion of security. And it works, more or less, as long as both parties continue to honor the contract. But the moment one person wants to renegotiate, the moment someone's needs change or their desires shift or they simply grow tired of the constraints, the entire structure collapses. And what emerges from the rubble is not grief over lost love, but rage over broken contracts. Not sadness, but the fury of someone who has been cheated, who gave up their freedom and did not receive the promised security in return. This is why breakups are so often bitter. This is why divorces turn into wars. This is why the end of friendships can feel like betrayals. Because these relationships were never based on genuine acceptance of the other person's autonomy. They were based on control, on the belief that if you invested enough, sacrificed enough, performed your role well enough, you could ensure that the other person would never leave, never change, never stop being the person you needed them to be. And when that belief is shattered, when the other person exercises their freedom in a way that violates the unspoken contract, the pain that emerges is not the pain of lost love. It is the pain of lost control. It is the rage of realizing that all your strategies failed, that all your investments were worthless, that the other person was never actually under your power at all. There is a young man, 24 years old, sitting in his apartment at 2 in the morning, scrolling through his ex-girlfriend's social media. They broke up 3 months ago. She ended it, said she needed space, said she was not ready for the kind of commitment he wanted. He told her he understood. He told her he respected her decision. He told her he hoped they could remain friends. But he did not mean any of it. What he actually felt was a rage, so intense it frightened him. What he actually wanted was to make her hurt the way he was hurting, to make her regret her decision, to force her to see what she was giving up. But he could not say any of that, so he said the things you are supposed to say. He performed maturity and understanding and respect. He wore the mask of the gracious ex-boyfriend. And now, 3 months later, he is still wearing that mask in public. But in private, alone in his apartment in the middle of the night, the mask comes off. And what is underneath is not grief. It is not sadness. It is a cold, calculating fury. He is looking at her pictures, analyzing her captions, trying to determine if she is seeing someone new. He is crafting and deleting messages, trying to find the perfect words that will make her respond, that will give him back some measure of influence over her life. He tells himself he still loves her. He tells himself he is just concerned about her well-being. He tells himself he is simply having trouble letting go. But none of these stories are true. What he actually cannot let go of is not her, but his control over her. What he cannot accept is not that the relationship ended, but that she was the one who ended it. What he cannot tolerate is the fact that she made a choice that contradicted his needs, his plans, his vision of how their story was supposed to unfold. And so he obsesses. He replays their conversations, looking for the moment where he lost control, the point where his influence over her began to slip. He constructs elaborate fantasies about what he could have done differently, what he could have said, how he could have been, that would have made her stay. He is not mourning a lost relationship. He is conducting a post-mortem on a failed manipulation, trying to understand where his strategy went wrong so he can avoid making the same mistakes in the future. This is what unprocessed pain looks like. This is what happens when someone experiences the loss of control, but cannot acknowledge what they are actually feeling. They create elaborate stories to disguise the truth from themselves. They tell themselves they are heartbroken when they are actually just angry. They tell themselves they are concerned when they are actually just controlling. They tell themselves they are loving when they are actually just possessive. And these stories can persist for years. People can spend decades nursing grudges, maintaining fantasies, constructing elaborate narratives about relationships that ended long ago. Not because they cannot move on, but because moving on would require them to acknowledge the truth. It would require them to admit that they were trying to control someone who could not be controlled. It would require them to face their own powerlessness. And that is more painful than any amount of obsessive rumination. Because here is the deepest truth about pain and control. The reason we cling to our suffering, the reason we cannot let go of our grievances, the reason we keep replaying our failures and nursing our wounds, is that doing so gives us the illusion that we still have some power over the situation. As long as we are thinking about it, analyzing it, trying to understand it, we feel like we are doing something. We feel like we are still engaged in the struggle. We feel like we have not completely surrendered. But the moment we let go, the moment we stop trying to figure it out or fix it or make sense of it, we have to confront the full reality of our powerlessness. We have to accept that it is over, that we lost, that we never had the control we thought we had. And that acceptance feels like death. It feels like the end of ourselves. Because so much of our identity is built on the belief that we are agents, that we have power, that we can shape our own lives and influence the world around us. To accept that we cannot control other people, that we cannot prevent loss, that we cannot guarantee any outcome no matter how hard we try, is to accept a fundamental vulnerability that most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. It is to acknowledge that we are, each of us, at the mercy of forces far larger than ourselves. That we are temporary, fragile, ultimately powerless creatures floating through a universe that does not care about our desires or our suffering. This is existential terror. This is the abyss that opens up when we stop pretending that we are in control. And most people will do anything to avoid looking into that abyss. They will create elaborate systems of belief to protect themselves from the truth. They will construct entire philosophies, entire religions, entire worldviews designed to give them the feeling that there is order, that there is meaning, that there is some force or principle or law that makes the universe predictable and manageable. And there is nothing wrong with this. These systems serve a purpose. They make life bearable. They give people a framework for making decisions, for understanding their experiences, for finding comfort in the face of uncertainty. But they are still ultimately defenses against the truth. They are masks we wear to hide from our own powerlessness. The question is whether it is possible to live without these masks. Whether it is possible to look directly at the truth of our condition and not be destroyed by it. Whether there is a way to accept our lack of control without falling into despair or nihilism or paralysis. Some philosophical traditions suggest that there is. Buddhism, for example, teaches that suffering arises from attachment, from the desire for things to be other than they are. And it offers a path toward liberation through the cultivation of non-attachment, through learning to observe experience without clinging to it or pushing it away. This is, in essence, a practice of surrendering control, of accepting that everything is impermanent, that nothing can be held onto, that the attempt to grasp and possess and control is the source of all suffering. Stoicism offers a similar insight, though framed differently. The Stoics taught that we should focus only on what is within our control, which is essentially our own thoughts and actions, and accept everything else with equanimity. They recognize that most of what happens in life is beyond our power to influence, and that suffering arises when we waste our energy trying to control the uncontrollable. These are wise teachings. They have helped countless people find peace in the face of difficulty. But they are also incredibly difficult to practice, because they require a fundamental rewiring of the human nervous system, a complete transformation of our instinctive responses to threat and loss. They require us to override millions of years of evolution with conscious discipline and practice. And even for those who dedicate their lives to these practices, who meditate for hours every day, who study the texts and work with teachers and commit themselves fully to the path, complete liberation from the pain of lost control is rare. Most people, even very advanced practitioners, still experience moments of grasping, of resistance, of suffering when things do not go the way they want. So perhaps the goal is not to eliminate the pain of lost control, but simply to understand it, to recognize it when it arises, to see it clearly for what it is, without adding layers of story and meaning and blame, to experience the raw sensation of powerlessness without immediately trying to escape it or fix it, or make it someone else's fault. This is a more modest goal than enlightenment or liberation, but it is also more achievable, and it can make a significant difference in the quality of our lives and our relationships. Because when we can recognize our own attempts at control, when we can see the ways we use pain as a weapon or allow others to use their pain to manipulate us, we gain the ability to make different choices. We can choose to set boundaries without guilt. We can choose to let other people experience the consequences of their own choices without rushing in to rescue them. We can choose to express our needs without making our pain someone else's responsibility. We can choose to stay in relationships that honor our autonomy and leave relationships that require us to surrender it. These choices are not easy. They often come with significant costs. Setting boundaries may mean losing relationships with people who cannot accept our autonomy. Refusing to be manipulated may mean being labeled as selfish or uncaring. Prioritizing our own needs may mean disappointing people we love. But these costs, while real and painful, are different from the slow death of living a life controlled by others or spending our energy trying to control people who cannot be controlled. There is a difference between the pain of loss and the pain of self-betrayal. The pain of loss is clean. It hurts, but it does not corrupt. It does not require you to lie to yourself or to become someone you are not. It is simply the natural consequence of being a creature capable of attachment, living in a world where nothing lasts forever. But the pain of self-betrayal is different. It is the pain of knowing that you have surrendered something essential, that you have made yourself smaller to fit into someone else's vision of who you should be, that you have traded your authenticity for the illusion of security or love or acceptance. And this pain does not heal the way the pain of loss heals. It accumulates. It compounds. It creates a kind of internal rot that spreads through your entire sense of self. This is what happens to people who spend their lives trying to control others or allowing themselves to be controlled. They lose touch with who they actually are. They become so focused on managing perceptions, on maintaining relationships, on avoiding conflict, on keeping everyone comfortable, that they forget what they actually want, what they actually feel, what they actually believe. They become hollow. They become masks with nothing underneath. And this is perhaps the greatest tragedy of the human obsession with control. Not that we fail to control others, but that in trying to do so, we lose control of ourselves. We become so focused on external outcomes that we neglect our internal reality. We become so invested in how we are perceived that we forget to pay attention to who we actually are. We become so skilled at performing for others that we lose the ability to simply be. There is a way out of this trap, but it requires courage. It requires the willingness to feel the pain of lost control without trying to escape it or fix it or make it mean something it does not mean. It requires the ability to sit with powerlessness, to acknowledge vulnerability, to accept that we are not and never were the masters of our fate that we imagined ourselves to be. This is not a popular message. We live in a culture that worships control, that tells us we can achieve anything if we just work hard enough, think positively enough, strategize effectively enough. We are surrounded by messages that promise us power, that tell us we can manifest our desires, that suggest the universe will give us what we want if we just ask in the right way. But these messages are lies, comforting lies perhaps. Lies that help people feel less helpless in the face of chaos and uncertainty. But lies nonetheless, because the truth is that we control very little. We can influence some things. We can make choices that increase or decrease the probability of certain outcomes. But we cannot guarantee anything. We cannot force reality to conform to our desires. We cannot make other people love us or respect us or even see us the way we want to be seen. And the sooner we accept this, the sooner we stop wasting our energy on futile attempts at control, the sooner we can begin to live in a way that is actually aligned with reality. We can stop trying to manage other people's perceptions and start paying attention to our own experience. We can stop trying to force outcomes and start responding to what actually is. We can stop performing and start being. This does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean giving up on goals or ambitions or desires. It means recognizing the difference between influence and control, between preference and demand, between hoping for an outcome and believing you are entitled to it. It means learning to hold your desires lightly, to work toward what you want without attaching your sense of self-worth to whether you achieve it. It means understanding that other people are not characters in your story. They are the protagonists of their own stories, stories in which you may play only a minor role or no role at all. And their choices, their feelings, their perceptions of you are not reflections of your value or your worth. They are simply expressions of their own inner reality, which you can never fully know or control. This is a lonely realization, because it means accepting that you are fundamentally alone in your experience, that no one can truly understand you or save you or complete you. It means giving up the fantasy of perfect connection, of being so deeply known by another person that you never have to explain yourself, never have to feel misunderstood, never have to experience the gap between your inner reality and how you are perceived. But it is also a liberating realization, because if you are fundamentally alone, if no one can save you or complete you, then you are also free. Free from the need to perform for others. Free from the obligation to manage their emotions. Free from the exhausting work of trying to control how you are seen. You can simply be yourself, whatever that means, and let other people respond however they respond. And paradoxically, this is when genuine connection becomes possible. Not the false connection of mutual control, where two people agree to limit each other's freedom in exchange for security, but real connection, where two autonomous beings encounter each other without trying to possess or change or manage each other, where vulnerability is not a strategy but a simple offering of truth, where love is not a contract but a choice that is made fresh in each moment, with full awareness that the other person could choose differently at any time. This kind of connection is rare because it is risky. It offers no guarantees. It requires both people to be comfortable with uncertainty, to be able to tolerate the anxiety of not knowing what will happen next, to be willing to stay present even when staying present is uncomfortable. Most people cannot do this. Most people need the illusion of control too much to risk this kind of radical openness. But for those who can, for those who have done the work of facing their own powerlessness and accepting it, this kind of connection is the only kind worth having. Because it is the only kind that does not require you to betray yourself. It is the only kind that allows you to remain whole while also being in relationship. It is the only kind that honors the fundamental truth of human existence, which is that we are each separate, autonomous, ultimately unknowable beings who can choose to share space and time and experience without trying to merge or possess or control. There is an old man sitting on a bench in a park. He is in his 70s, his body showing the wear of decades, his face marked by time and experience. He is watching people pass by, observing the endless human drama that plays out in public spaces. Young couples arguing, parents struggling with children, friends laughing together, strangers avoiding eye contact. The whole complex dance of human interaction. And he sees it all so clearly now, in a way he could not when he was younger. He sees the control games, the manipulation, the desperate attempts to manage perception and influence behavior. He sees the pain that people create for themselves by trying to force reality to match their expectations. He sees the masks, layer upon layer of performance and pretense, hiding the terrified children underneath who just want to feel safe. He sees it because he has lived it. He has spent decades playing these games himself, wearing these masks, trying to control the uncontrollable. He has experienced the pain of lost control more times than he can count. He has felt the rage of thwarted will, the anguish of powerlessness, the despair of realizing that nothing he does can guarantee the outcomes he desires. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Maybe it was age. Maybe it was accumulated experience. Maybe it was simply exhaustion, the recognition that he did not have the energy to keep fighting reality anymore. Whatever the cause, he found himself letting go. Not in a dramatic moment of enlightenment, but gradually, almost imperceptibly, like a hand slowly opening to release something it has been gripping too tightly for too long. And what he discovered, to his surprise, was that letting go did not lead to the catastrophe he had always feared. The world did not fall apart. He did not become powerless or irrelevant or lost. Instead, he found a kind of peace he had never experienced before. Not the peace of having everything under control, but the peace of no longer needing everything to be under control. He still has preferences. He still has desires. He still takes action to influence outcomes when he can. But he no longer confuses preference with entitlement. He no longer mistakes desire for need. He no longer believes that his happiness depends on reality conforming to his will. And this shift, subtle as it is, has changed everything. He can now be in relationships without trying to control them. He can care about people without trying to change them. He can offer help without creating obligation. He can set boundaries without guilt. He can experience disappointment without rage. He can feel pain without making it anyone else's responsibility. And most importantly, he can be himself. Not the carefully constructed persona he spent decades building and maintaining. Not the mask he wore to manage how others perceived him. But simply himself, whatever that is in any given moment. Sometimes wise, sometimes foolish. Sometimes generous, sometimes selfish. Sometimes strong, sometimes weak. Just a human being, flawed and finite and free. This is what lies on the other side of the pain of lost control. Not the absence of pain, but a different relationship to it. Not the achievement of control, but the acceptance of its impossibility. Not the perfection of the mask, but the courage to remove it and see what is underneath. And what is underneath, for most of us, is not as terrible as we fear. Yes, there is vulnerability. Yes, there is imperfection. Yes, there are parts of ourselves we have been taught to hide, aspects of our nature that do not fit the image we want to project. But there is also authenticity. There is also freedom. There is also the possibility of genuine connection with others who are willing to meet us without their masks as well. This is the invitation that the pain of lost control offers us, if we are willing to receive it. Not to become better at controlling, not to develop more sophisticated strategies of manipulation, not to build stronger masks, but to recognize the futility of control, to accept our fundamental powerlessness, and to discover what becomes possible when we stop fighting reality and start living in alignment with it. This is not an easy path. It requires us to give up many of the beliefs and strategies that have defined our lives. It requires us to feel pain without immediately trying to escape it or fix it or blame someone for it. It requires us to sit with uncertainty, to tolerate anxiety, to accept that we cannot guarantee any outcome no matter how much we want it. But it is also the only path that leads to genuine freedom. Because as long as we are trying to control things we cannot control, we are enslaved to those things. We are giving them power over our emotional state, our sense of self, our ability to be present in our own lives. We are making our well-being dependent on external circumstances that we cannot reliably influence. But when we let go of the need for control, when we accept that we are not and never were the masters of our fate, we reclaim our power in the only domain where we actually have it. We reclaim our ability to choose how we respond to what happens. We reclaim our freedom to be ourselves regardless of how others react. We reclaim our capacity to find meaning and purpose and joy, even in the midst of circumstances we would not have chosen. This is the paradox at the heart of the human condition. We gain power by accepting our powerlessness. We find freedom by surrendering control. We discover who we are by letting go of who we think we should be. And we learn to love by accepting that we cannot possess or change or guarantee the behavior of anyone we love. The pain you feel is the control you lost. This is not a comfortable truth. It is not the kind of insight that makes you feel better about your suffering. It does not offer easy solutions or quick fixes. It does not promise that if you just think differently or try harder or follow the right steps, you will be able to eliminate pain from your life. What it offers instead is clarity. The clarity to see your own patterns, your own strategies, your own masks. The clarity to recognize when you are trying to control something that cannot be controlled. The clarity to understand that your suffering is not evidence of injustice or failure, but simply the natural consequence of being a control-seeking creature in an uncontrollable world. And with that clarity comes choice. Not the choice to stop feeling pain, but the choice to stop adding unnecessary suffering on top of the pain. The choice to stop using your pain as a weapon. The choice to stop allowing others to use their pain to manipulate you. The choice to stop confusing love with control, care with possession, connection with obligation. These choices will not make your life easier. They may, in fact, make it harder in some ways. Because living authentically, setting boundaries, refusing to participate in control games, often comes with social costs. People who are invested in controlling you will not appreciate your newfound freedom. Relationships that were based on mutual manipulation will not survive your refusal to play that game anymore. You may lose people you care about. You may face judgment and criticism and rejection. But you will also gain something invaluable. You will gain yourself. You will gain the ability to live in alignment with your own truth, rather than in service to others' expectations. You will gain the freedom to make choices based on what you actually want rather than on what you think will keep others comfortable. You will gain the possibility of genuine connection with people who can meet you as you are rather than as they need you to be. And you will gain a different relationship to pain. Not the absence of pain, but the ability to experience it without being destroyed by it. The ability to feel the ache of lost control without making it mean something it does not mean. The ability to grieve what you cannot have without raging against the injustice of not having it. The ability to accept loss without adding layers of story and blame and self-pity on top of the simple fact of loss. This is wisdom. Not the wisdom of knowing how to get what you want, but the wisdom of knowing how to be okay when you do not get what you want. Not the wisdom of control, but the wisdom of acceptance. Not the wisdom of the mask, but the wisdom of the face underneath. And perhaps this is the ultimate lesson that pain has to teach us. Not that we should avoid it or overcome it or transcend it, but that we should learn from it. That we should let it show us where we are still clinging, still grasping, still trying to force reality to match our expectations. That we should use it as a mirror, reflecting back to us the places where we have not yet accepted our own powerlessness. Because every instance of pain is an opportunity. Not an opportunity to fix something or change something or make something right, but an opportunity to see ourselves more clearly, to recognize our patterns, to understand our strategies, to notice the masks we wear and the games we play and the ways we try to control what cannot be controlled. And with each recognition, with each moment of clarity, we have the opportunity to choose differently. Not to become perfect, not to eliminate all our control-seeking behaviors, not to achieve some state of enlightened detachment, but simply to be a little more honest, a little more authentic, a little more willing to accept reality as it is rather than as we wish it to be. This is the work of a lifetime. It is not something you do once, and then you are done. It is a practice, a continual returning to the truth, a constant letting go of the illusions we create to protect ourselves from our own vulnerability. And it is hard work. It is uncomfortable work. It is work that most people will avoid for as long as they possibly can. But it is also the only work that actually matters. Because everything else, all our achievements and accomplishments and acquisitions, all our carefully constructed identities and reputations and relationships, all of it is built on sand if we have not done this fundamental work of accepting our own powerlessness and learning to live in alignment with that truth. The woman sitting alone in her apartment, staring at the message on her phone. The man in the corporate office, exhausting himself with constant performance. The caretaker whose helpfulness is a tool of control. The jealous partner who cannot tolerate their loved one's autonomy. The young man obsessing over his ex-girlfriend's social media. The woman trapped in a marriage where her voice has been slowly erased. All of them are experiencing the same fundamental pain. The pain of lost control. The pain of confronting their own powerlessness. The pain of realizing that other people cannot be managed or possessed or forced to behave in ways that make them feel safe. And all of them have the same choice. They can continue to fight against this reality, to develop more sophisticated strategies of control, to build stronger masks, to invest more energy in the futile attempt to make the world conform to their will. Or they can surrender. They can accept. They can let go. Not surrender in the sense of giving up on life or becoming passive or accepting mistreatment, but surrender in the sense of releasing the belief that they can or should be able to control things that are fundamentally beyond their control. Surrender in the sense of accepting that other people are autonomous beings with their own wills, their own needs, their own paths. Surrender in the sense of recognizing that the universe does not owe them anything, that reality is not obligated to conform to their preferences, that pain is simply part of the human experience and not evidence of cosmic injustice. This kind of surrender is not weakness. It is the opposite of weakness. It takes tremendous strength to accept your own powerlessness. It takes courage to remove your masks and show your face. It takes wisdom to recognize that the pain you feel is not what you think it is, that it is not about what happened to you, but about what you cannot control. And it takes love, not the false love of control and possession and obligation, but real love. Love for yourself, for your own flawed and finite humanity. Love for others, for their autonomy and their freedom and their right to make choices you would not make. Love for reality itself, for the way things actually are rather than the way you wish they were. This is the path that the pain of lost control can lead us to, if we are willing to follow it. Not a path of comfort or certainty or security, but a path of truth, a path of freedom, a path of genuine connection with ourselves and with others, and with the fundamental nature of existence. It is a narrow path. It is a difficult path. Most people will not choose it. Most people will continue to cling to their illusions of control, to wear their masks, to play their games, to suffer the pain of lost control without ever understanding what that pain is trying to teach them. But for those who do choose it, for those who are willing to face the truth no matter how uncomfortable it is, there is something waiting on the other side. Not happiness necessarily, not peace in the conventional sense, but something deeper and more real. A kind of aliveness that comes from living in alignment with truth rather than in service to illusion. A kind of freedom that comes from accepting rather than fighting. A kind of love that comes from letting go rather than holding on. The old man on the bench knows this. He has walked this path. He has felt the pain of lost control and learned what it has to teach. And now he sits, watching the human drama unfold around him, seeing the patterns he once lived, feeling compassion for those who are still trapped in the struggle he has finally released. He does not judge them. He does not think himself superior. He knows that he spent most of his life exactly where they are now, fighting the same battles, wearing the same masks, experiencing the same pain. He knows that the only difference between him and them is time, experience, and perhaps a small measure of grace that allowed him to finally see what he had been doing to himself. And he knows that he cannot save them. He cannot make them see what he sees. He cannot force them to let go of their need for control. He cannot control their journey any more than he could control anything else in his life. All he can do is be present, be authentic, be willing to share his truth if anyone asks. And accept that most people will not ask. Most people will continue on their own paths, learning their own lessons in their own time. This is the final acceptance. Not just accepting that you cannot control others, but accepting that you cannot save them either. That each person must walk their own path, make their own mistakes, learn their own lessons. That your wisdom, hard-won as it is, cannot be transferred to another person. It can only be offered, and they can choose to receive it or not. And this acceptance, paradoxically, is what makes genuine help possible. Because when you are not trying to save someone, when you are not invested in changing them or fixing them or making them see things your way, you can actually be present with them. You can listen without agenda. You can offer perspective without attachment to whether they take it. You can care about their well-being without making yourself responsible for it. This is what real compassion looks like. Not the false compassion of the caretaker who helps in order to create obligation. Not the manipulative compassion of the person who uses their caring as a tool of control. But genuine compassion, which recognizes the other person's suffering without trying to take it away, which honors their autonomy even when they are making choices you would not make, which offers support without creating dependency. And this kind of compassion is only possible when you have done the work of accepting your own powerlessness. When you have felt the pain of lost control and learned to sit with it without trying to escape. When you have recognized your own patterns of manipulation and chosen to release them. When you have removed your masks and discovered that you can survive without them. Because only then can you see others clearly. Only then can you recognize their masks without judgment, their control games without condemnation, their pain without feeling obligated to fix it. Only then can you be in relationship with them as they actually are rather than as you need them to be. This is the gift that comes from understanding that the pain you feel is the control you lost. Not just understanding it intellectually, but knowing it in your bones, feeling it in your body, living it in your daily choices. This understanding transforms everything. It changes how you relate to yourself, how you relate to others, how you relate to the fundamental conditions of existence. It does not make life easy. It does not eliminate suffering. It does not give you power over circumstances or people or outcomes. But it gives you something more valuable than power. It gives you freedom. The freedom to be yourself. The freedom to let others be themselves. The freedom to experience pain without being destroyed by it. The freedom to love without trying to possess. The freedom to live in alignment with truth rather than in service to illusion. And this freedom, once tasted, changes everything. You cannot go back to the old ways of being. You cannot return to the comfortable lies you once told yourself. You cannot put the masks back on and pretend you do not know what is underneath. You have seen the truth, and the truth has set you free. Not free from pain, but free in pain. Not free from loss, but free in loss. Not free from the human condition, but free within it. This is what lies on the other side of the pain of lost control. This is what becomes possible when you stop fighting reality and start accepting it. This is what you discover when you have the courage to remove your masks and see what is actually there. And it is worth it. Every moment of discomfort, every instance of vulnerability, every loss of the illusion of control, all of it is worth it for the freedom that waits on the other side. The freedom to be real. The freedom to be whole. The freedom to be human in all its messy, imperfect, beautiful complexity. The sun is setting now. The light in the park is changing, becoming softer, more golden. The old man on the bench watches as people begin to leave, heading home to their lives, their relationships, their ongoing struggles with control and pain, and the fundamental impossibility of making reality conform to their desires. And he feels a deep tenderness for all of them, for their suffering and their courage, for their masks and their authentic faces, for their desperate attempts to control and their inevitable failures, for their pain and their resilience, for their humanity, which is also his humanity, which is the shared condition of all conscious beings trying to make sense of existence in a universe that offers no guarantees. He stands slowly, his body protesting the movement after sitting for so long. He begins to walk home, moving through the fading light, carrying with him the wisdom that has taken a lifetime to acquire. The wisdom that pain is not the enemy, that control is an illusion, that freedom comes from acceptance rather than from power, that love requires letting go rather than holding on. And as he walks, he knows that tomorrow he will wake up and face new challenges, new losses, new instances of the pain of lost control. Because this is the human condition. This is what it means to be alive. The work is never finished. The lessons are never fully learned. There is always another layer of illusion to see through, another mask to remove, another moment of powerlessness to accept. But he also knows that he is no longer fighting. He is no longer resisting. He is no longer trying to make reality be something other than what it is. And in that acceptance, in that surrender, in that willingness to be with what is rather than what should be, he has found a kind of peace that no amount of control could ever provide. This is the message. This is the truth that the pain of lost control is trying to teach us. Not that we should give up on life or become passive or accept mistreatment. but that we should recognize the difference between what we can influence and what we cannot control. That we should learn to hold our desires lightly, to work toward what we want without making our worth dependent on achieving it. That we should love without trying to possess, care without trying to control, connect without trying to merge. And most importantly, that we should be willing to feel pain without making it mean something it does not mean, without using it as a weapon, without allowing it to be used against us, without adding layers of story and blame and self-pity on top of the simple, clean experience of loss. Because pain, when it is not complicated by our resistance to it, is just pain. It hurts, but it does not destroy. It aches, but it does not define. It passes through us like weather, like seasons, like all the other temporary conditions of existence. And when we can let it be what it is, when we can experience it without trying to escape it or fix it or make someone pay for it, we discover that we are stronger than we thought, more resilient than we imagined, more capable of bearing the weight of being human than we ever believed possible. This is the gift hidden inside the pain of lost control. The gift of discovering who you are when you stop trying to be who you think you should be. The gift of finding freedom in acceptance rather than in power. The gift of learning to love in a way that honors autonomy rather than demanding possession. It is a gift that most people will never unwrap. Most people will spend their entire lives fighting against the pain, trying to avoid it or overcome it or make it someone else's fault. They will build elaborate systems of control to protect themselves from the experience of powerlessness. They will wear masks so convincing that they forget there is a face underneath. They will manipulate and be manipulated, control and be controlled, all in the desperate attempt to avoid the simple truth that they are vulnerable, finite, ultimately powerless creatures in an uncontrollable universe. And there is no judgment in recognizing this. There is no superiority in having seen through the illusion. Because we are all doing the best we can with the tools we have. We are all trying to survive, to find meaning, to create some sense of safety and predictability in a world that offers none. And the strategies we develop, the masks we wear, the control games we play, they all make sense given our evolutionary history and our individual experiences. The only question is whether we are willing to see what we are doing, whether we are willing to recognize the cost of our strategies, whether we are willing to consider that there might be another way, a way that does not require us to control or be controlled, a way that allows us to be authentic and vulnerable and free. This is the invitation, not a demand, not a judgment, not a claim that there is only one right way to live, but simply an invitation to consider that the pain you feel might not be what you think it is, that it might not be evidence of injustice or failure or someone else's cruelty, that it might simply be the natural consequence of trying to control what cannot be controlled. And if you can see this, if you can recognize this pattern in your own life, then you have a choice. You can continue as you have been, fighting against reality, trying to force outcomes, wearing your masks, playing your control games. Or you can try something different. You can experiment with letting go. You can practice accepting what you cannot change. You can work on being authentic rather than strategic. You can learn to love without trying to possess. This is not easy work. It will not happen overnight. You will fail many times. You will catch yourself trying to control, manipulating, wearing masks, falling back into old patterns. This is normal. This is part of the process. The work is not to become perfect, but to become more aware, to notice your patterns more quickly, to choose differently more often, to gradually, incrementally, shift your relationship to control and pain and authenticity. And with each small shift, with each moment of awareness, with each choice to be real rather than strategic, you will discover something. You will discover that you are more than your masks. You are more than your control strategies. You are more than your pain. You are a conscious being, capable of choice, capable of growth, capable of living in alignment with truth rather than in service to illusion. There is a moment in every human life when the ground beneath their feet disappears. Not literally, of course. The floor remains solid, the walls stay upright, the world continues its indifferent rotation. But something inside collapses. Something that held everything together suddenly gives way, and in that instant, a person discovers a truth they had spent their entire existence avoiding. The pain you feel is not what you think it is. It is not the consequence of what happened to you. It is the echo of what you can no longer control. This is not a comfortable revelation. It is not the kind of insight that brings peace or closure. It is the kind of knowledge that changes the architecture of your mind, that rewrites the story you have been telling yourself about who you are and why you suffer. And once you see it, Once you truly understand it, there is no going back to the innocence of not knowing. Before we continue, a warning. The knowledge that is about to be shared cannot be unlearned. It will permanently change the way you see human relationships. If you are ready to abandon comfortable illusions and see what is behind the stage, subscribe now. Because this is not just a video. It is the beginning of your journey under the mask. Now let us begin. Imagine a woman sitting alone in her apartment on a Thursday evening. The light from the window is fading, casting long shadows across the furniture. She is holding her phone, staring at a message that arrived 3 hours ago. The message itself is unremarkable. A simple text from someone she thought she knew, someone she believed cared about her. But the words on the screen have triggered something deep inside her chest, a sensation that feels like drowning in air. Her hands are trembling slightly. Her breathing has become shallow. And if you asked her to explain what she is feeling, she would probably say she is hurt. She would say she is disappointed. She would say that this person has let her down. But that would not be the truth. Not the whole truth, anyway. Because what she is actually experiencing in this moment is not the pain of betrayal or abandonment. What she is experiencing is the sudden, terrifying realization that she cannot make this person behave the way she needs them to behave. She cannot control their choices. She cannot force them to see her value. She cannot manipulate the outcome of this relationship to match the script she had written in her mind. And that loss of control, that confrontation with her own powerlessness, is what creates the sensation she calls pain. This is the secret that most people spend their entire lives running from. We do not suffer because bad things happen to us. We suffer because we discover, again and again, that we cannot prevent bad things from happening. We suffer because reality refuses to obey our will. We suffer because other people insist on being themselves instead of the characters we need them to be in our personal drama. Think about the last time you felt genuine emotional pain. Not physical discomfort, but that deep ache that seems to originate from somewhere behind your ribs, that heaviness that makes it difficult to breathe properly. Now ask yourself this question and answer it honestly. What were you trying to control when that pain arrived? What outcome were you attempting to force into existence? What person were you trying to change? What situation were you trying to manipulate into a shape that felt safe? The answer to that question is always there, hiding beneath the surface narrative. A man feels devastated when his business partner betrays him, but the real wound is not the betrayal itself. The real wound is the discovery that he could not control his partner's loyalty, that all his careful planning and strategic thinking could not prevent this outcome. A mother feels heartbroken when her adult child chooses a path she disapproves of, but the real source of her suffering is not concern for her child's well-being. The real source is the realization that she no longer has the power to direct her child's life, that her influence has limits, that her child exists as a separate being with autonomous will. This is why grief feels the way it does. When someone we love dies, we are not merely sad about their absence. We are confronted with the ultimate loss of control. We cannot bring them back. We cannot negotiate with death. We cannot manipulate reality into giving us more time. The finality of it, the absolute impossibility of changing what has happened, creates a pain so profound that it can feel like our own death. Because in a sense, it is. It is the death of our illusion that we have any real power over the fundamental conditions of existence. Human beings are control addicts. We are born into a world that is chaotic, unpredictable, and fundamentally indifferent to our desires. And from the moment we gain consciousness, we begin constructing elaborate systems to create the illusion of control. We develop routines and rituals. We build relationships based on unspoken contracts. We create moral frameworks that promise predictable outcomes. We tell ourselves stories about how the world works, stories that always place us at the